Benji and welcome to Dice vs Cards. Today we're teaching you how to play Hostage Negotiator. So we've already done a review for this game and I'll put a link to that in the description below. And yep, I think I've got this now on screen over here. And we're going to be teaching you in the most concise manner possible without giving you information overload. So let's stop talking and show you how to play. So the object of the game is to either capture or eliminate the hostage taker and save at least half of the hostages. So to set up the game, you'll need to place all of the conversation cards face up in front of you with all of the different types and costs that can be found in the bottom right hand corner of the card in separate piles. You'll also have a starting hand of 6 conversation cards, all of which will have 0 cost in the bottom right hand corner. You'll then need to randomly select one of the hostage takers, but the game suggests is you take Arcane Masua for your first game, and then randomly select one of that hostage taker's major demands and place it face down, and then randomly select one of the escape demand cards that come with the game. Then you'll take 10 cards from the terror cards that come in the box, shuffle them into a deck, and then randomly place one of the pivotal event terror cards at the bottom of that deck. The player board that sits in the center of the table will have a number of hostage tokens in the middle here, dependent on the number that can be found on the hostage taker itself. You'll then place the threat token on the threat dial in the space, again stipulated by the hostage taker. The conversation token you'll place on marker 0, and then you're good to go. So each turn is broken down into 3 phases, the first of which is the conversation phase, and this is where you're going to be playing any number of cards from your hand, and each time you do you're going to be rolling a number of dice that's pertinent to wherever your threat tracker is on the threat dial. So you'll see between 2 and 6 you're going to be rolling 2 dice. So when you play the card, you'll then have a number of rewards or penalties depending on the number of successes you roll. So a 5 or a 6 face is an automatic success, but whenever you roll a 4, you can choose to discard 2 conversation cards from your hand to change that into a success as well. So you can only ever have a maximum of 2 successes, and here you'll see in the middle of the card are the rewards and penalties that apply or are applicable dependent on how you've rolled. So in this what are your demands card, for example, if you are to get 2 successes, you can reveal a demand and add 2 conversation points, and you resolve these from left to right wherever that's relevant. So to reveal a demand, you're going to pick either the hostage taker's major demand or escape demand and flip that card so that its abilities and effects are applicable and usable from then on. When you add conversation points, you'll take the conversation token and move it that relevant number up or down the tracker. Again, in this instance, 1 success would have had the same benefits, but you would have had to have picked to either reveal a demand or only added 1 conversation point. However, if you roll 0 successes, you'll increase the threat tracker on the dial by 1 in this instance. So you can play as many conversation cards as you want, rolling dice each time you do and applying the relevant rewards or penalties accordingly until you've decided you no longer want to play anymore. We then move to the spend phase, and this is where you're going to take any conversation points you've gained throughout the conversation phase and buy these further conversation cards from the available area. So at any point you can also cash in one of the cards in your hand for 1 more conversation point. But you cannot buy any conversation cards that you've used during the previous conversation phase until the next spend phase. So those cards face up in the available area are available for you to buy, and you can use a number of conversation points equal to the number in the bottom right hand corner to buy as many of those cards as you want and add them to your hand. Once you've finished the spend phase, you then flip face up those conversation cards that you used on that previous conversation phase, and they'll be usable and purchasable on the next turn. You then move to the terror phase, and this is where you're going to draw the top card of the terror deck and follow the instructions on it accordingly. So here the card Don't Test Me asks you to roll a dice, and if the result is less than or equal to the current threat level, you immediately kill a hostage, and that's what this symbol throughout the game means. So you would, in that event, if you failed, take one hostage token and place it in the killed section. It also says if there is any unrevealed demand, you increase the threat by 1. So here the escape demand is still unrevealed. And just a point on demands, generally they allow you to spend conversation points or do something to get a short-term benefit. But they'll also come with a penalty for conceding that will be applicable throughout the rest of the game. So the major demand and escape demands, once conceded, will remain in play. The major demand you flip or rotate 90 degrees clockwise, because there are also minor demands that you can draw from the terror deck, but you can, once conceding them, place them in the terror deck discard pile. So that's how the turn sequence works for Hostage Negotiator, but how are we going to interact with these hostages more? Well, we've already learnt how hostages can be immediately killed by a card effect, but anytime your threat rises to this K section of the threat dial, and you're forced to then further lose or further increase the threat level, you'll kill one hostage each time that happens, represented by the symbol here. Conversely, if you're decrease the threat dial down to the S marker, anytime you decrease the threat further, you'll save one hostage. Remembering, one part of the win condition is for you to save at least half of those hostages. The second half is to either capture or eliminate the hostage taker, and you can capture them anytime the hostage pool is empty and you take an action that allows you to save one more hostage. At that point you'll have captured the hostage taker, and as long as it's combined with having at least half of the hostages saved, you'll then win the game. But you've also got conversation cards that will allow you to eliminate the hostage taker. And you might want to do that when the hostage pool is empty, because similarly, if you eliminate the hostage taker and there are more than half of the hostages saved, you also win the game. However, if you eliminate the hostage taker whilst there are still hostages in the hostage pool, it's at that point then that the second in command takes over, who's a lot less patient than the primary hostage taker. So you've still got some hoops to go through before you're able to win the game. So once the second in command takes charge, you'll immediately remove any demand cards from the play area, and any that you draw from the terror deck are immediately discarded. So time really is of the essence when the second in command is in charge, because any time the threat would be increased, one hostage gets killed per increase. So there's some variable endgame and win conditions there. So to summarise, you win if at any point there are no hostages left in the hostage pool, you have saved at least half of the hostages, and the abductor has been captured or eliminated. So that's how this game plays. Now it's up to you to get to the table.